Good morning and welcome. It is 9:30. It is the 16th day of August 2021, and once again, I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM with all the news, weather, and sports of the tabletop role-playing game world. And it is day 16 of RPG A Day 2021. We're doing this all month. We're taking a look at these prompts/questions provided to us by Autocratic and CastingShadowsBlog.com. Today's prompts are Move, Tribute, Villain, and Fiend. And I thought we'd talk about some villains, because, not enough villain love. Every now and then we just gotta take a look at our beloved villains and how we can use them to move the story of our game along. Because let's face it, as we have found out time and time again, our heroes are nothing without their villains and the conflict they create. And in many cases, our heroes are responsible for the creation of the villains, and our heroes' very existence creates the villains. I mean, Batman is a perfect example. Would Gotham have had so many unusual individuals running around it if not Batman? I mean, before Batman, there was just crime families, and then suddenly you got the Riddler and the Joker and Captain Condiment and Kite Man. Yeah, Kite Man. And Harly, of course. So, did Batman create the villains, or did the villains create Batman? Do the villains create the player characters, or do the player characters create the villains? And it's very easy to just look at villains and think of them as stat blocks. This orc has got armor class 12 and he's got 5 hit points, and they're gonna kill 40 of them. But it's much more important to think of our villains as real individuals and think about how would this dude or this girl go about their villainous ideals. Don't think about the player characters and what they're going to do to respond to the villain. Think about the villain as a person. Who are they? Why are they doing this? What is their end goal? Do they have an end goal? As we always say when designing villains or NPCs, ask yourself, what does this guy want? What is she afraid of? What is the one thing that makes this villain stand out from all the other individuals they've encountered? What is the one thing that is their thing, their driving force? Because villains, if approached correctly, can be full-fledged, living, breathing individuals, and sometimes the most beloved characters in the story. I mean, let's face it. Vader, man. Vader. Everybody loves Vader. Harly. Everyone loves Harly. And everybody loves watching the growth of Vader as a character, and everybody loves watching the growth of Harley Quinn as a character and how they've evolved. And that's because the creators of these villains, the creators ourselves, don't think of them as stat blocks. We think of them as individuals with goals and fears and desires and secrets and, things that they like and things that they don't like, and how are they molded and shaped by the adventures of the game. And especially in, where we're talking about when you're looking at like the character record sheet of a villain, and they've got like 20 different options that they can use. You're like going to be hand scratching. All right, and blah, 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 blah. What is he going to do now? What is he going to do now? And that's very easy to just think of them as stat blocks rather than just think of them as, how is this individual going to use the abilities that they have to deal with the situation? Sometimes when I'm designing villains and designing games, I think of the game from the villain's point of view, as if the villain is the main protagonist and the player characters are the antagonists. And I think about telling the story from the villain's point of view, because the villain is the motivator of everything that's going on, usually in your typical role-playing game. And then the heroes usually are reactionary to the villain. The villain motivates the story. What I tend to do is I tend to think of, in terms of, again, what they want, what they fear, but also when designing a villain, what are going to be the iconic things that they're going to use during that attack. Because, if I look at the stat block of a character like a dragon, that's like 2 pages of just multiple options. But especially if it's like can cast spells or has super abilities besides just claws and breath weapon. But really, how many of those is it going to actually use in a fight? And every round of the villain, the dragon, am I going to just have to look back at these 2 pages and go, okay, well, this round he's going to, and then this round. But more, I should just think about focusing on the iconic abilities and then break down that villain into 2 or 3 things, that they're going to use most often in the fight. My dragon might have 20 abilities, but let's face it, in that fight, it's probably just going to, only use 2 or 3 of those abilities. A couple claw attacks, breath weapon every now and then, tail slap, maybe 1 or 2 of its other special abilities, especially the most iconic ones. But, this ability in 57 here, can talk to fish. That's not going to really come up in a encounter, so I don't need to add that to the stat block. But I could think about why can he talk to fish? And how is he using that ability to talk to fish to move his or her plot along? We love the villains because they motivate the heroes, and they are the most iconic characters of a franchise. Everybody remembers Hannibal Lecter. How many people remember Clarice Starling, or the person, that helped Clarice Starling, or the name of Clarice Starling's boss? But nope, Hannibal Lecter. Everybody remembers that. You don't see any Clarice Starling costumes at the Halloween store, but you see plenty of Hannibal Lecter costumes because Hannibal Lecter was iconic. Darth Vader is iconic. They have iconic goals. They have iconic wants. They have iconic needs. They have iconic fears. They have iconic secrets. They have iconic, little things that make them different than everybody else. Maybe your villain collects snow globes from every town that they destroy, to remind them that, oh yeah, I destroyed Rutabaga Town. Here's the magnet I got. Who are they? What do they want? What do they fear? What's the one thing that makes them stand out? And what is their thing? Like I said, maybe this villain takes keychains or, teeth from his enemies, or, writes his name on the walls when he's there, or only wears yellow. But that makes that villain different than the 37 other villains. And what are their iconic abilities? What is the things that's really going to stand out in a fight? Because Vader, has got tons of powers, but, tends to just focus on 2 or 3 in their fights. Force choke, telekinesis, tossing things around, and lightsaber stuff. And just being awesomely intimidating because he's Vader. So give your villain some love. Write the story from the villain's point of view. Think about what motivates the villain. Why the villain is doing what they're doing. What does that villain want? What does that villain fear? What's the one thing that makes that villain stand out? The villain is the hero of their own story, and they create the conflict that motivates the player characters. The player characters are always running to catch up to the villain and respond to what the villain does. So think of the villain as if you're telling the story from the villain's point of view, and write the adventure as if they are the antagonist, the protagonist, the hero, and the player characters are the individuals that are trying to stop whatever it is that is motivating your villain, your fiend, your move. Villains. Yeah, we love these guys. Hi, I'm your Grumpy Guide to All Things Gaming. This is RPG A Day 2021, Day 16. It's my mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. If you appreciate this content and want to hear more, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 1,000 subs. I will talk to you later. Stay villainy. Villainy? Stay hydrated. It's going to be hot today. Take care.